I'm Nikki Carci Cruz from Ateneo de Manila University, and I am very happy to welcome you to this panel, A Creative Crisis, to engage or not to engage. This panel has a journalist, a children's book author, an illustrator, and they'll talk about types of agency for creatives in times of crisis. To write or not to write, to engage or not to engage. Our speakers, there are 4 of them. I'll introduce them one by one before each one speaks. So I'm now going to call the first speaker, and I would like to introduce Aurora Almendral, a Filipina American journalist and writer based in London. She has worked in over 30 countries, from Somalia to Mexico, has lived in Thailand, Spain, New York, and the Philippines, where she maintains a home in Cebu. Her journalism has been published by the New York Times and National Geographic magazine and has been recognized with multiple awards, including from the Overseas Press Club of America and a Hillman Prize for Investigative Journalism. She is currently working on her first book. Aurora, you have 8 minutes.
Thank you so much, Nikki. So journalism, it is under so many crises right now. There's the financial collapse. There's the actual collapse of outlets, which has been happening in waves over and over again. And especially in the last couple of years, there have been mass layoffs. It's harder to reach new audiences. And we're occupying narrower and narrower space of everybody's information environment, which means that it's harder to fight disinformation. It's harder to have a shared consensus reality with the wider society, which is immensely difficult, and I have no solutions for that answer. There's also the news itself. A lot of people are just burnt out. There's so much terrible news happening all of the time. We're in 2 wars. One of them is a genocide, and the individual sort of collapses of our country. And there seems to be an airplane crash every week these days. And there are also government attacks. As many of my colleagues have mentioned, there have been at least 270 Palestinian journalists that have been killed by Israel in the last 2 years. And governments are attacking journalism using the regulatory state. I was just in a panel with Maria Reza yesterday, and she has been arrested. She had 11 arrest warrants against her. The entire Duterte administration had, did its best to try to take her down using the regulatory state. We get hundreds upon thousands of online attacks, especially during the Duterte administration. That was true for her and any other journalist that was working at that time, including myself. There was a time I was living in Manila, and I went outside. I went outside to go and meet my friend for lunch, but I'd had a few days of malicious surveillance where they make it obvious that they're watching you, and they came to my door, and I never went back to that apartment again. I met my friend for lunch, had somebody else pack up my stuff, and I stayed somewhere else until I could fly out of the country. But I still went back to Manila. I still reported on the issues that were important at the time, because threats are not. In fact, especially in the face of threats, we continue to do our work. And I'm not trying to sound heroic, but this is the reason they're doing that is to try to silence you. So the best you can do is not be silenced. More recently, in a totally kind of different issue that I've had with the journalism industry, is that I've been working for a legacy media news organization, and I had a lot of moral injury in the way that the journalism industry as a whole, not just my news organization, but really everybody in the most media in the U.S. was reporting on Palestinians in Gaza. And I recently left my job because I didn't want to participate in this. I didn't want to say that this is what I was doing. And that's under threats in the Philippines. I said, I'm not going to disengage. I know what you're trying to do, but I'm not doing it. But I did choose to disengage recently from the work that I was doing. And it's not from, I'm not disengaging from what's happening in Gaza, but from the way that it's being covered. I was a cog in the machine, and there was only so much I could do. When I go back to the U.S., I'll be returning to a government that's hostile to journalism, and in some cases, it's our own owners that that have pressured. It's the corporate owners of various news organizations that have pressured its own journalists to sort of concede to the government's hostile demands. I'm not in that position, but there have been many others who have been in that position, and many people have resigned over various reasons for these political crises. But I also, so it's not, I can't imagine. I can see why some people don't want to be journalists. Some young journalists decide not to do it. Some young people decide, no, I'm not going into that. There's no money in it. Everybody hates you. And I also see why some powerful journalists who are in positions of power, pressured to do something, have chosen to resign. And I don't know what they're going on to do, and I don't know what they knew. But I also know the work of journalism, and I know how painstaking it is to sift lies from the truth, or even sift misinformation from the truth without the malice behind lies. I know how difficult it is to get information, and this is true for breaking news. That's a simple thing that happened that day. It's incredibly difficult to get that information as it's unfolding, and this is also true for deeper investigations that take down corrupt entities, government malfeasance. And that's not something AI or TikTok creators can do. This is incredibly difficult work. It takes skill and money and time. And so there are many problems in my industry, and there might be some things that I choose to not do or not participate in. But I think that the mission of journalism hasn't changed, and in fact, it's only become more important. And for that, I'll always be a journalist.
Thank you very much. From a journalist, we move to Russell Molina, who is an internationally published children's book author and graphic fictionist with more than 30 titles to his name. His work has earned numerous honors in the Philippines, including the prestigious Palanca Awards, the PBBY Salanga Prize, and the National Book Awards. In 2018, his book was recognized in the honor list of the International Board on Books for Young People. In 2022, Molina received the Gawad Pambansang Alagad ni Balagtas, a Lifetime Achievement Award given by UMPIL, which is the Writers' Union of the Philippines, for his significant contribution to children's literature. His stories are celebrated for their creativity, cultural depth, and ability to connect with readers across generations. Through his books, Molina continues to champion the power of storytelling to inspire, to educate, and spark imagination in young minds worldwide. You have 8 minutes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Russell Molina, and if we can go to the first slide, please. I am what they call a martial law baby. That's the term for kids like me, those who were born and raised during one of the darkest chapters in our history. During martial law, 70,000 people were imprisoned, 34,000 were tortured, and 3,240 were killed. All verifiable, all facts. But those are just numbers. Behind the digits are families torn apart and lives silenced. And yet, as a child, I was shielded from the truth and from the pain. I didn't feel the fear. Martial law sounded like banging pots and pans, banging in the streets for noise barrages. For me, that was like a party. But for many, it was resilience. It took me many years and many conversations with fellow state university students before I truly understand. We had different childhoods. While I was robbed of the truth, they were robbed of parents, robbed of brothers, robbed of sisters, robbed of friends. Just a few years back, while doing research for another project, I asked relatives of the victims and survivors about martial law. And even now, it is hard to talk about it. Then and now, silence has been a form of survival. That is why when I was given a chance to write about martial law for young readers, I grabbed it. 1201 was born. 1201 is a graphic novelette, a historical fiction book based on martial law. It was originally published in 2016. It tells the story of a group of friends, bandmates, stranded on the road 1 minute after curfew, 1201. It becomes a journey of discovery, of awakening, as they experience the terrors of the time at the hands of the power-hungry. The characters, Neil, Edgyboy, Joy, Lily, are nods and tributes to real-life activists. While writing them, I found myself in imagined conversations with them. I doodled, I wrote, I empathized. And for me, writing was therapy for the soul. And readers connected. It was voted the #1 book in the Reader's Choice Award. Some told me it felt like a horror story because it was, but horror rooted in reality. There are now moves, and you can feel this creeping in our schools, to revise and erase this part of our history. Ironically, the book became popular because some people tried to ban it. Aside from 1201, I wrote another book, which is EDSA, which was part of the Never Forget book bundle. It was accused of brainwashing children. The publisher and the creators were red tagged. If you're not familiar with the term red tagging, it is when individuals or groups are falsely branded as communists or terrorists, often as a way to intimidate them or to silence them. It is both dangerous and it puts lives at risk. Imagine books meant to educate and inspire children about a dark part of our history, banned and labeled subversive. But this act also reinforces something important. When stories and when books threaten those in power, it means they are successful in their work. That is why revisionism, rewriting or erasing history, is insidious. It is not just about changing textbooks. It is about erasing memory, erasing empathy. And if we are not vigilant, martial law stops being a memory of the past and becomes an idea that can be resurrected in the present. That is why I believe in times of crisis, artists should engage. Because at the heart of art is learning to remember how it feels to be more human. When you tell a story, even though it's personal, readers will find themselves in it. Our histories may be different, but our feelings connect us. We all know the feelings of loss, of fear, of longing, and also hope. I was reminded of this when I went to Bologna at the Children's Book Fair. Amid picture books, there were entire walls devoted to Ukraine, entire stalls devoted to Palestine, art about war. Because children too deserve honesty. We must respect their capacity to understand complex ideas, even war, through the lens of art. One exhibit said, "We are convinced that art can help us make sense of reality, no matter how complicated, and help us think about the future." That is why art is never neutral. It is a conversation. It is a statement. It is a point of view, and it is an invitation to imagine, an invitation to connect, an invitation to act. As one artwork powerfully puts it, No missile can attack our imagination. It is in this same book fair where I met Mercedita. She told me her activist son, Bazu, was kidnapped and has been missing since 2023. Suddenly, it's martial law all over again. That is why I choose to write. Because in crisis, silence is not an option. To engage is to speak, to remember, to connect. Art gives us a voice to own, a voice for those who cannot speak, a voice for those silenced, a voice that can be loud enough for the whole world to hear. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is an illustrator, picture book author, and visual artist based in Baguio City. Danielle Florendo's latest book, Kaub Ofuden Shin Lijang Uta, or The Legend of Uta Cave, is a collaboration with the indigenous people of Balbalan, Kalinga, and it received the 2024 translation grant from the National Book Development Board. It was featured at the 2025 Bologna Children's Book Fair in Italy as part of the Illustrators exhibition. Today, Danielle is a lecturer at the University of the Philippines, Baguio. When not illustrating or teaching, she pursues research and writes stories inspired by communities across the country. Danielle, you have 8 minutes.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Danielle, or you can call me Dani. And yes, I am a picture book illustrator and recently an author. So when we were all talking about creatives and crisis, I was thinking about the survey of Philippine children's books across time, where all of our works are grounded in the realities, the horrors, and the experiences of the Filipino, from martial law, from the drug on wars, right? From the Marawi siege. Now, when we were having this conversation, I wanted to go into the conversations of becoming someone or being part of the indigenous peoples or being a part of the indigenous people community of the Cordilleras. So if in the Philippines, we have indigenous peoples, these are the people rooted in the land and communities. I am part of the Cordilleras. Me and Kawayan here are part of the Cordilleras. And when I was starting my career as a writer and researcher at the University of the Philippines, I wanted to write more stories coming from the Cordilleras because we needed more representation coming from these communities. Also by writing in mother tongue. I went back to the mountains of Kalinga to start my journey as a author of a folklore, a folk tale on this particular mountain. I wish I could show this, but you'll just have to see it from this book. On a particular mountain called Uta Cave. Uta Cave is a water reservoir that is probably, say, 9 or 5 hours away from the main city. So if you're familiar with Apo Wangod, the Mambatok of the Philippines, Uta is about much farther, the last spot or the last stop of the jeepney. Then you have to hike about 8 hours up. There lies the community of Balbalan, Kalinga. I wrote about this because we found out that until now, well, not found out, this is a continuous story about sieges happening in the mountains of the Cordilleras. We have this conflict between the Philippine militaries and also the NPAs. Okay. It was a crisis for me because when we were writing stories and doing researches and even pro bono workshops for children in order for us to get materials from the main city to the children of the villages, we were always halted and we were always stopped. And this is when I realized this was the crisis. The fact that we were also red tagged for something that is for the people. And we thought that we would be protected by the very government who was supposed to protect us. But we were not. We felt threatened. I'm just going to make this more anecdotal because I feel like this is a crisis that maybe not a lot of us, especially in the Philippines, or outside the Philippines, I should say, know about the struggle. It's an internal struggle that becomes a domino effect that will affect everybody in the country. From the mountains of Kalinga to the lands of Marawi. All of the children here are nothing but collateral damage to an ongoing war an ongoing war that displaced so many people. Going back to my work in Kaupufudan Shinlijang Uta, that's how you pronounce it. Thank you, Nikki, for the pronunciation, or the legend of Uta Cave. When I first engaged in this research work, I was halted by soldiers asking if I was an NPA and telling me that once you step here and we find out that you are an enemy of the state, you will not go home. I can only imagine what Bazu was feeling. I can only imagine about the millions of Filipino activists who wanted to protect or who yearned to protect our very people there. Yes, I have sat among them, and yes, I have been there. And to hear these horror stories of never coming back home, it tugs your heart because these are also children who wanted to do something for the children of that community. It took me 2 years to finish this book. And I really wish that I had more support for it. I had the support of the community who helped me write the book. Again, the story is about this mountain called Uta Cave. Uta in English means vomit. It's a weird story about alcoholism and also death. But it's a story about a cave that is one of the last freshwater reservoirs for the people of Balbalan, Kalinga, to which is now being occupied. 2019, DNR submitted a proposal to halt the land from the indigenous people in order to protect it, meaning barring the people who live there from using their own resources, their motherland. And that's why the story came into fruition. It took a lot of manuscript writing, it took a lot of revisions, because every time they're going to tell me, you're not going to really write about a certain cave. I mean, eventually, the government will take it away from them anyways. They'll find a way. And those words still rang in my head. When the village elders came to me, they showed me a signed letter from ex-President Rodrigo Duterte. Trying to tell them, or that's letter signed saying that you cannot take this land away from us. And he signed it as okay, we'll talk about it some other time. We'll talk about it some other time. He's always, pushing the conversations till eventually some action had to be done. And I wish I could say it here, but I couldn't. Now, writing indigenous stories for children, circle back to writing indigenous stories for children, is to show them the realities of the Philippines, right? Like what I've said. And this was the reality of what was happening in Kalinga. But it's not just Kalinga. The Cordilleras is made of multiple communities of indigenous peoples who've been experiencing the same problems. I am 28 years old, and these stories span much longer than I have been alive. It's still the same problem. Today, I decided that, it's time that we have more stories from folklore, from the Philippines. And we should not be, as writers, creatives, and illustrators, we shouldn't be afraid because our main goal is really to educate, right? We want to advocate for education and literacy in the mountains. My next story will take me back to the waters of Sitangkay, where I've ended up this year. The crisis there is much stronger or much more deeper than I really wish it was. And the crisis always states with the lack of funding as one. And two, the lack of education. The lack of these conversations that we're trying to keep. Children's stories will not always be about happy, pretty clouds and how the world is going to, make you happy every single day. It's going to provoke the questions of what can I do to be part of this world? What can I give to be part of this world? And how the world can help me. Our stories in the Philippines have that kind of impact. If you go down to our pavilion, or if you go down to our stand, you'll find multiple stories just like that. And yes, we Filipinos will keep talking about the realities of our country. Not just the country, but even outside. With my book here, Masalan ang Tanong ng Batang si Usman, talks about the Marawi siege that happened of May 2017. 400,000 people displaced, children becoming collateral damage to what happened as a result of this entire conflict between the government and the militants and the the indigenous militants. So these stories talk about the realities of what they were facing, but has a conversation to tell them like, hey, some things are scary, but this has to be said. From indigenous stories to the realities of the Philippines. And I hope that you do find our books down there and talk more about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Danny. I'll now introduce our last speaker. Working across painting, installation, and sculpture, Kawayan de Guia incorporates an eclectic mix of objects into his wall-based works and art projects, including Ifugao rice gods, decorative torpedo bombs, and American jukeboxes transformed into Pinoy jeepneys. His works humorously and piquantly comment on a multitude of issues, from the histories of occupation, trade, and exchange that have influenced Philippine history and culture, to the relationships between community and commodities. Like his mentors who were part of the Baguio Arts Guild, he is deeply embedded in Cordillera culture and interested in the heritage and indigenous cultures of the region. De Guia is also a curator and author of key projects such as the Axis Art Project, presenting the artists of his community. Kawayan, you have 8 minutes.
Thank you, thank you. So, for those who you don't know, kawain means bamboo. I know I don't look very Filipino, but you have to look harder, and I'm 200% Filipino. So, I come from Baguio, same with Danielle. And in Baguio, it's a rich place where the modern ways of today clash with the ancient yesterday. The artists up there are very much connected with the community, and a lot of the times we do things collectively. Like, for example, this tent, which was done in 2011, we founded the Axis Art Project, which was trying to create some sort of dialogue between artists, carvers, because carvers or people who practice indigenous, so-called indigenous crafts are not really considered artists. So I wanted to create this kind of dialogue between the filmmakers, the so-called craftsmen, and the contemporary artists. Then we naively, we managed to do a week-long festival, holding workshops, film showings, installations, and whatnot. Originally, I wanted this festival to be some sort of biennale. I wanted it to go on every year or every other year. The following year, we decided to go deeper into the mountains. We produced this rickety-looking tent, which is a bus in the shape of a bus. But this bus traveled to 150 kilometers from Baguio to the north in the town of Sagada. Every day we would again engage with locals and sort of, I don't know, I guess we were trying to immerse ourselves with highland knowledge. Okay, this is in 2014, I believe. Another project in the public market, which was called Markets of Resistance with Angel Velasco show. Here we put up a Lady Liberty in the center of the market, where we rented 3 or 4 market stalls and turned them into little galleries, and we bartered artworks for goods. So this community, I guess, we're anywhere between 50 to 100 or 15, this was 2014. And then somehow in 20, what was 16, Duterte came into power. Sometime 2016, I received notice that I was on the most wanted list of the drug authorities. And I said, well, how could that be? Why is that? And apparently, in 2011, during our first festival, the drug authority had planted some weed onto one of the artists I invited, and anyway, we went to court. We won. Next thing, they were after me. So I was stopped, labeled number 11 in Benguet. Imagine that. That freaked me out. Now, around the same time, I noticed my neighbor get killed, like literally point blank get killed. And there he was. I knew from that moment on, I could not go out of the house. And I did not go out of the house for 6 years. In the process, I was like saying, okay, what from being a organizer who engages himself with the public, does installation art, what now? Where does my work go? We managed to put together this book. It was another facet. Okay, if I could not create art festivals, let's create books. And I think that's why I'm here. We created Tiwtiwong, which is a encyclopedia, not encyclopedia, to life art living in Baguio and the Cordilleras and beyond. It really was trying to encourage younger people to know more about this special place called Baguio and how special the art from this place is. This was one project, and we founded Baguio Kunst, okay? This is another project, Market of Resistance by Angel Shaw. Again, it's a byproduct of activities that we had established in the years when we could do things in the streets. Another thing was, I started to develop a diary, which is MoMA. MoMA is betel nut. For those, it's the stuff they chew. It's a nut you chew and you spit out something that looks like blood. The same, I said, it looks like the same blood of my neighbor when he got killed. And I started this whole diary, which became my daily thing. Every day I would do a couple of drawings and then spit at my paper. This is another thing. Okay, this is during the lockdown, so we were not allowed. Suddenly, the local government wanted to sell our public market to big developers, and we could not rally since it was locked down. They made it in 2 minutes. Okay. In such a way, so what we created these are light boxes actually, but we gained enough attention that people started to oppose this big development project in Baguio. So I guess what I'm trying to say is we have to try to find ways in going around the blockade of silencing. I just wanted to show you a bit more of my silly drawings. I've gathered around 4,000 to this day. There it is. Everybody hates a poor artist. Everybody hates a rich artist. Everybody hates a good artist. Killing time like an artist. Some sort of middle-aged artist. So that sort of thing. So, there. Ghost of a wig. Big mistake. Yeah, so a lot of reflections on all sorts of subjects, not just political, but I guess it's how we have to innovate and in order and continue to work with the times. So thank you anyway.
Before I ask you to raise your hands if you have questions, we live in a very weird moment, and we can only come here acknowledging that because usually it's more fun in the Philippines and we have a lot of fiesta colors. And obviously that's not what it looks like. And after hearing them, that's not also what it sounds like. But that's also because before coming here, there are rallies, there's corruption, there's a lot of frustration in the Philippine government. And that's why we come here hoping to be truthful and to tell our truths. And so if this is a heavy sounding panel, I'm not going to apologize. Right? But thank you, Kawayan, your photos. Maybe you can keep showing them because I think it really captures, you allowed us to have a little bit of laughing because we need it, but it's a kind of laughter that is the type that comes with shit. Like, I don't know, sorry, I ran out of words. So I'm now going to probably ask just one round. If you could just tell us a backstory a little bit on one of your projects. I don't know if journalists call because the art projects are art projects. I don't know if there's the counterpart for a journalist. So maybe I'll start with Danny. Tell me something about that book you were, I didn't catch it, but there's paperwork involved to get this book done.
Hello.
What is that about?
Okay, so for Kabufudan, I call this my 2-year-long baby. It's a labor of love. I usually, when I work on book projects, they only take me 2 months to 3 months, but this took me 2 years because of all the documents I had to file. I had to go back and forth into the village, right? So my research, I was actually inspired also by Candy Girly, who's here, yeah, because she has a really good book called Wild Song, and I was also like, I realized that, I want to have that kind of research and background also, because you can't just write about indigenous people, right? You have to be with the community, right? So I can't just make out of things. That's disrespectful. So I have to come back home to the community and ask for their permission and ask them to write with me. So the book is actually written, retold and illustrated by me and the indigenous people of Kalinga. If you go through the entire NCIP process, this thing has I'll just show you at the back. It's a book with the official certificate of precondition coming. Yeah, it has. It's difficult to get this certificate. It's a very expensive certificate. A certificate that even the people, or even the community of Kalinga wanted to pay for. You don't pay for your own story. If I get something from you, and then you have to pay it again, what kind of thing is that? So we had to pay a government body to ask permission if they can use their own story or they can share their own story.
If I were to play devil's advocate, was that procedure for their protection?
It was, yes, supposedly, right?
No.
But there is a clause that says, if the story really comes from the mountains and is told in the mountains, they should at least be helped, not by paying and paying.
So what was supposed to protect them now becomes a barrier
Yes.
for more stories to
Because
be
now
told.
nobody wants to write, because we don't want to pay this much money to write that story. We don't we want to tell you, we want to produce a story. So bottom line is, the reason why I had this, because it was actually into law. You're supposed to have this. If you're going to talk about folklores and certain tangible and intangible parts of a culture, right? So I just had to go with it because I didn't want to be canceled. I just wanted to go with it.
Yeah.
So I had to do it. And this is the entire council of elders coming from Balbalan. And we were all taking a picture and they asked me, why are we going to pay for that? That came from us naman. Like, yeah, but we have to publish it. But again, maybe say a little silver linings that if you ever purchase this book, proceeds go back directly to the community. I will never get rich becoming a children's book picture or illustrator, but my advocacy still lies. So that was one of the things that I remember in this project, of the back and forth, the many money, but in the end, here it is. You can find this online. I'll just share the links.
Okay, thank you, Danny. Maybe I'll go to you, Russell. You showed that group of books. Of course, I'm part of the people who buy that kind of stuff. Can you tell us about that project that you showed, right?
It's really meant to bundle same theme books, including EDSA, and I think there were a couple of books there that were originally from outside of the Philippines but translated into Filipino. It was meant to educate and inspire children about dictatorship, about overuse of power, and in a way to also celebrate what we've accomplished with EDSA Revolution. So it's really more like bundling the same things. 1201 is not part of that bundle. I wrote it in 2016, and it was really meant as a celebration after all of these in 2016. Cut to who would have thought that the son of the dictator will be back. Now it's a cautionary tale, not no longer a like a celebration. But it's a graphic novelette, and in between pages are lyric sheets, songs of the band talking about those milestones in their lives. No, so it's a way of also extending on a more emotional plane what they were thinking and what they were feeling. So that's 1201.
Wait, do we have questions? Raise your hands, please, if you have questions. Okay, if not yet, then I asked you if there was such a thing as a journalistic project that you can show us the behind the scenes, the way they did with their books. Is there?
I mean, yeah, we often call it projects if it's a large, if it's a large thing. But I mean, I don't have any slides, I don't.
All right. Maybe Kawayan will go to you. So the what you showed us, was that shown during the pandemic or after? Or
Which bit?
is it still there? All the drawings, the diaries,
drawings.
yeah.
No, actually, I never talked about this publicly because it was too dangerous then. So I never showed or told anyone. Even my friends didn't know that I was on the list. Of course, my family knew, but really, I even when they were filing the case of Mr. Duterte at The Hague, they were asking me, to petition, to add my story, and I said, look, I don't want to shake the, I don't want to get into trouble, So I really was silent, and it's only now, what was it, last year it traveled to Taiwan, and now it's in Jogjakarta, the Jogjakarta Biennale. So it's only traveling now. My story is only coming out now that I feel a little bit, secure or safe. I don't feel like my life's at risk.
Okay, we're taking questions. Questions. Your lives are not in danger. Only theirs. No, sorry. Yes, please, Ken.
How has the ascent of another Marcos to the throne affected your work and your creativity? I mean, what does it mean? Because like you're here talking about all this resistance, and everyone is like, "Oh, I thought the government paid for this," right? So where is that? How does that work?
Well, for me, sales for the books picked up because it was a form of resistance. Buying the book is a vote, I guess, against corruption. Buying the book is a vote against tyranny. So, and we've been getting people buying the book and donating them to different schools because some schools ban those books. So they buy as many as they can, bring it to their friends, bring it to their schools, as not just as readers, but as a form of resistance and as maybe as a form of activism also for them. Yeah.
I think I would just say, as of last year, our president start. Okay, there was another series of bombing that happened in Balbalan, Kalinga, where the story took place. And when I started posting and talking about this, the book actually provided, like if you purchase the book again, as I was really pushing it, it's going to help rebuild parts of a school that was bombed recently. And that's why I'm always advocating for you to please just go ahead and support as much as possible, right? It's kinds of these projects where it was community done. We did it in community, we did it together to go back to the community. Because there's this saying in Kalinga that what you take from the land, you have to give back. I took a story out from its land, and now I have to give it back. That's why I'm touring the book around the Philippines. After Germany, I'm going back to Kalinga, and I'm going to hand the story back to them.
No.
I'm not based in the Philippines at the moment, so I wouldn't say. I would say that the Marcos regime is not affecting me.
Well, it's always fucked up and always will be fucked up when it comes to Philippine politics. I'm just glad I'm still alive. That's all.
I was given the sign that the time is up. I was waiting for a message I could latch onto so I could give a good closing. And so, without one, I'm just going to have to say this panel has been the most difficult one to moderate yet. The reason is the people who are in front of you have genuine burdens to carry, and they carried it well, but not to the point that they could sing and dance in joy. They could only say, we engaged when we could. We get frustrated. There are stories that were supposed to be triumphant that ended up being cautionary tales. There are things not shared because you didn't feel safe. There are things accomplished, but it took far longer than it should have. And barriers were put in place where they shouldn't have been. And there's someone who's not home, but going to another place or in another place. It's not necessarily the promised land or a land of milk and honey. There's nowhere to go and nowhere to hide for a world in multiple crises. The thing is, all of us have to strive for collective flourishing. Because Germany is not free from any of the burdens and the pains of humanity. All of us carry this. Thank you for being a very, I was going to say responsive. By being quiet, this is the correct response to a panel like this. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you for welcoming us. If you're Germans in the crowd, thank you for welcoming us to your country. We spoke with our voices and we felt that you had been listening to us well. And we bore our pain in front of you, and you have been open in listening. Thank you very much.